it's Emily with Miss Anita's Crafts, and today I want to talk about a fun art style that I like to call melted crayon art. And so this is one way to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you've probably seen a whole bunch of the ones on Pinterest and in different places where they show like the rainbow across the top, where you just have to take your crayons, you peel the paper off of there, and then you break them in half, hot glue them to the top, and then maybe melt it over like a silhouette or something. There's a lot of scenes of people jumping in the rain, dancing, just usually a white background with a black figure or, like a shape on there that you can kind of see as a shadow. And then, just sort of rains down in rainbow colors on top of whatever it is. This was a fun one because I wanted to do something with the color theme, so I went with the donuts with pink icing, and then I used only the pink colored crayons along the top. Kind of supposed to be different shades of pink, but when they melt, they all sort of look like one shade. But that's okay, you kind of get the idea. It looks like an icing drip coming from the top. So something a little different. But on this one today, I'm going to try something that kind of reminds me of some of the resin art that I've been seeing everywhere. You've probably seen a lot of the videos where people have colored resin that they pour over kind of like a really cool tabletop, and it might look like an ocean, and then they go with the heat tool, the embossing tool, and they just sort of start to fan the colors a certain direction so it looks like a wave, kind of looks like a wave crashing, and it really does look like real water when they do it that way. But I want to do something kind of like a simpler version of that, kind of the same theme in mind, a little ocean painting. And I get bored of the same old typical horizontal sunset picture, so I wanted to do this one with the diagonal. So I just brought this over to show what I used because this was kind of done a couple of days ago, so this is nice and dry. But you can see that I just can kind of tell my brush strokes. What I did with the blue is sort of just wiggling it through here. Usually I like to start with a solid color blue and then go over it with a little bit of darker over here where the water's deeper, and maybe lighter over here where we're kind of coming close to the sand. And then of course down the center I just went with some white there, some white paint, and then using a couple different colors of tan. I used one of these sponges that you can just tear into pieces, or you could even use a paper towel if you don't have one of these, and then just kind of tap 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 and put a little texture on there. Over a solid tan background, because then it made it look a little bit like sand, and then you kind of have a little bit of an unpredictable look too. You can't really tell exactly what it's going to look like because you're just tapping along, and some of it comes out dark and some of it comes out light, and you get a cool effect that way. Well, now on this one I wanted to find a use for the white crayons because you don't really use a lot of white crayons. You use all the other colors, but you don't really get to use the white crayons. So I'm going to be taking the papers off of this one, and I'll show you what we're going to do with this. Kind of is annoying to get the papers off, but get it started with your fingernail, or kind of get something you can slice down the edge and it comes off pretty easy. But I will pull these papers off and I'll show you what the plan is for using the white crayon on the canvas. Okay, I think 2 crayons ought to do it, so I just pulled out 2 of them and took the paper labels off, and now I'm going to use some crummy old scissors that I don't care about. You can actually start by just breaking whatever you can by hand, because I want to break these into small pieces. Some of them are kind of brittle, so they might snap pretty easy, but break them into as small pieces as you can, and once they get too small to snap with your hands, then you can use the scissors. And we'll try to get something like maybe this size, little tiny pieces, as small as we can. So just watch that it doesn't fly across the room, and then cut your little pieces. Doesn't make too big of a mess, but it will have some little crummies, that kind of fly around. So chop this up and get them all into small pieces, and then we'll get ready for the next step. Alright, so now I've got all these little crayons cut into tiny little pieces, and it's about as small as I could get them. So I have the glue gun on here, and I'm just going to kind of right along the shoreline, this is where it gets kind of weird, I'm going to put a little bit of glue, just a little bit at a time, right along there, and I'm going to stick a couple of these in there. So I don't have to put them all totally close together and right up against each other, but I'll just put a few and kind of space them out as long as I'm following along that shoreline right there. And then we'll see what that looks like as we reach the end. Okay, so now I have the whole shoreline pretty much covered in little bits of crayon, kind of following that little wiggly line there. They're all glued on there pretty good. And some sitting up, some laying down, doesn't really matter. I have a piece of paper here to protect my little workstation, and I have the heat tool plugged in. So now normally you would have your crayons along the top, and it would be, they'd all be in a nice row, and then you would just sort of hold it up, maybe on an easel, and then you would just let the heat tool rest up here until all those crayons melted and started to drip. And you want to shut it off before they start to loosen from the hot glue, because you're also kind of reactivating the hot glue and they can slip out, also once they get a little melty. So you want to be careful of that. But what I want to do is I want to sort of tilt the canvas on a diagonal like this. And I'm just going to aim the heat tool down this way on top of them and let that sort of create that little pull effect, that look where it looks like the waves are crashing right there on the sand. So I'm going to get this thing turned on, just kind of go back and forth over the area, back and forth until I start to see some dripping. And holding it upright this way at an angle will also help to make sure that those drips go the right direction, because I don't want them on the sand, or maybe you do, but I want mine to be coming from that way. So I'm going to make sure I hold it in that angle. And that's about it. So I really just wanted to get all of the crayon bits sort of melted at least a little bit. Even if they didn't create a drip from each one, that was okay. I just kind of wanted them to get smoothed over. Like you can kind of tell that now it looks like a little foam. Maybe you could almost think of them as shells or rocks or something, but it definitely doesn't look like globs of crayon stuck in hot glue anymore, because it all sort of melts together. And then of course, once I was seeing that this little area was getting kind of a nice drip there, I wanted to stop because I didn't want that to keep going or run off the page. It's also a little hard to make sure you're maintaining that angle, so maybe having someone else hold it up to make sure that they're all going the same direction will be helpful while you focus on the heat tool. But really, pretty much as soon as you start seeing that little splatter, you'll start seeing the crayons get shiny, and then you'll see a little splatter coming from them, and that's about when you can stop on that area and move to another spot, because you don't want to linger for too long, and like I said, that little crayon bit might fall right off. But this gave it a really cool effect, and I think I might even, go in later and glue some seashells or something, maybe along the edge here, because I think that would add to it, make it a little something special there, and just a little different, because you don't usually see beach paintings with this kind of a look. Usually it's just the standard, sky up at the top and then water in the middle, so kind of used to seeing the same old stuff. I wanted to do something a little different, and I think this one was pretty quick and easy too.